Hey, welcome to The Art of Espousing. I'm James, and here with Lisa, and we're so glad you joined us today. Today, we're diving into a topic that every married couple faces at some point. We're talking about forgiveness in marriage. This isn't just about saying, hey, I'm sorry, or moving on. We're talking about the deep, sometimes difficult work of truly forgiving each other when we've been hurt.
Yeah. If you've been married for any length of time, you know hurt is inevitable. But what do we do with that hurt? How do we actually move from the pain to healing? And what does real forgiveness actually look like day to day in the reality of our marriage? Ruth Graham captured this beautifully when she said, a marriage is made up of two great forgivers. That's what we're exploring today. How to become those great two forgivers in our marriage. And I think we're going to find this conversation both challenging and helpful.
But before we dive into today's discussion, Lisa and I want to share something that we're really excited about.
Yeah, that's right. We've been working on something brand new, and we think it's going to be a game changer for couples who feel stuck. You know, over the years, we've talked to so many couples who love each other. They want a great marriage. They want it to work, but they keep having the same conversations over and over again. They're circling around the same issues without really getting anywhere.
Right. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they don't have clarity. They can't see what's actually happening in the marriage and what they need to do next. So we created what we're calling the Marriage Clarity Accelerator. This isn't counseling. It's not a retreat. It's a focused one-day guided experience designed to help couples see clearly and move forward together. So instead of spending months and wondering what to do next, couples walk away from this day with a game plan how to move forward.
Yeah, we're talking about gaining a clear understanding of your current marriage dynamics. This would be insight into your personality dynamics and patterns, mapping out the factors that have contributed to your current reality, and getting aligned around your shared future and leaving with a personalized, practical action plan. Who would not say yes and amen to that? No more guessing, no more wondering. You'll have clarity and a path forward.
We're so excited about this because we've seen what happens when couples can get unstuck. When they finally see clearly, everything starts to shift.
That's absolutely right. So if you're tired of spinning your wheels and you're ready to cut through the confusion in your marriage, we'd love to talk to you about the Marriage Clarity Accelerator. Just head to our website or go to the show notes and schedule a free 30-minute call with us. We'll talk to you about where you are, what you need, and whether the accelerator is a right fit for your marriage. So now let's jump into today's conversation.
You know, Lisa, as you shared Ruth Graham's wisdom that a great marriage is made up of two great forgivers, I couldn't help but think about how many of us probably heard that quote and thought, yeah, that sounds nice in theory, right? But here's the reality. Forgiveness in marriage isn't just some nice to have quality that makes everything easier. It's actually one of the hardest but most essential skills we have to develop if we want our marriage to not just survive, but truly thrive.
That's right.
So Lisa, I want to dive right into this with you because I know you have so much to share about this topic. And honestly, I think our listeners need to hear this conversation, especially if they're sitting there thinking, we're stuck. We keep having the same fights. We keep hurting each other in the same ways. We want you to know there's hope, but it starts with understanding what forgiveness really means and why it's so challenging in the context of our marriage.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So to start this conversation, Lisa, when we talk about forgiveness in marriage, what do we actually mean? I think a lot of people assume that they know what forgiveness is, but there might be some misconceptions here that are worth clearing up right from the start.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of misconceptions, but the two or three that come straight to mind is forgiveness is not forgetting. It actually requires work on the other side of forgiving and dealing with the offense and the behavior. So couples often think if I forgive, then that means we're just not going to talk about the subject and it's just going to go under the rug. You can forgive, but that can't be a part of it. There's more to it after the actual act.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the other things I think is that people feel like they're losing themselves. They're just giving up their rights or their desires or the things that they feel that are important to the relationship. And sometimes the dynamic in communication, one of the two of us could actually shut that down and not actually hear what the other person feels. So that's what's the responsibility on both of us leaning into this and not shutting our other person, our partner down, but realizing we're not losing ourselves. We're actually coming together, not coming apart. So we actually have to collaborate and understand what each other is contributing to this and not just going, I submit to your way. Yeah. You get your way. Now, I have done that before with you. Just going, I forgive you. Let's move on. And you're like, that doesn't feel right. You know when it doesn't feel right. So I can't just submit or you can't just give way to me. That isn't actual forgiveness. There has to be a collaboration, a coming together, and a oneness.
Yeah, it's kind of a lie when people say, well, just forgive and forget. Well, no. Just because you forgive something doesn't mean the pain's not there or there's going to be memories of what happened. That takes time. And you have to do that, like you said, on the other side. But that's a myth that you just forgive and forget. No, we have memories. We have things that trigger us to remember those things.
Yeah, early on in marriage, I would say, James, because you are a more dominant personality, this is why I think understanding our personality is so important. And I'm more of a nurturer, have a softer voice than you do. I wouldn't know how to come and be honest with my feelings. So one of the things that you did that was great, even knowing yourself way back then before we knew those personality types, is you didn't want to make me feel small or lose myself or lose my feelings. It was a miracle at 22, 23 that you would actually know how to actually bring me in and not make me lose myself. And sometimes and that could reverse, the female's more dominant and we've got to come together. But yeah, and one of the things is it doesn't always mean that you're wrong. Asking for forgiveness, like if I'm saying, will you forgive me? I feel like I don't want to do that because I'm going to think you think that I'm wrong or you're coming to me with something.
I'm admitting that I did something wrong.
Right. I can't think of an example with you, but I recently had a coworker come in and she said, I want to forgive you, which was pretty brave, which, I can appreciate that. She said she had I offended her. And what she explained isn't what I meant at all. And it actually, my record of events wasn't the same as hers. But the reality is that I could choose right now, I could set her free from that. And the truth is, I impacted her that way.
Right.
I don't even remember how I did that. And so I just said, you know what, Susie Bob, please forgive me.
Right.
I never intended to hurt you. I wasn't admitting that she was right. I was saying, I'm sorry that impacted you that way. And I think when we think we have to go, I didn't do that, James. That's not what I said. That's not what I meant. You can go, no, I can just say, can you please forgive me without feeling like that I am admitting that I'm wrong. Now, she may thought I was admitting I was wrong, but I knew in my heart I didn't do anything wrong, but there's no reason for me not to just set her free and us be in oneness.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great transition to the next thought about this is why forgiveness is particularly difficult in marriage. I'm sure that we've all had friends and people who have offended us that we forgive. We're supposed to love our spouse, this person, more than anyone else. So why would you say that forgiveness is so difficult for married couples?
Yeah, it does tag into because it's like the need to be right. I need to be right. I'm not giving it up. We were just with a couple the other night. The one spouse, they needed to be right and they were not willing to budge. And so we know that there's nothing to work with when you get to that place. Forgiveness, swept under the rug, talked about that. That's another reason why it makes it hard because the reality is couples don't know how to work it out on the other side. And so there is work on the other side. You still have to process through some of those things. Right now, you and I, this many years later, we have the skills to do that. But early in marriage, and some couples, you can be married as long as we do. We work with couples who are married longer than us, who never gained these skills. But you may need help along the way with a pastor or a coach. But what makes it hard and why it's so difficult is because we don't know what to do on the other side of me saying, I forgive you, James. The reality is we kind of have the expectation that after I say, I forgive you, James, that everything's going to be great tomorrow. We know this isn't true, but we kind of expect it to all go away. Like you're all of a sudden going to have all the skills or I'm going to not be emotional or whatever that is. But it's hard to know what to do on the other side. So then that causes us not to want to work through it. And it makes it difficult. It's just lack of skill.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that just because your spouse asks for forgiveness or acknowledges where they messed up, that when you forgive them, that they're not going to mess up again.
Right.
Right. And I think there's sometimes that expectation, well, I forgave you for this already. And then you went and did it again. Well, we're still human, right? And, sometimes as an individual, I may have asked forgiveness for you for something, but I'm still working on it myself. That doesn't mean that I've fixed maybe all those issues in myself. That's
where grace that's where grace comes in. We go, you know what? You do need to take responsibility for yourself. And I would need to take responsibility for myself. But the reality is we have some really strong patterns and habits and responses that go way back before we came together that are constantly being undone. And so to expect there to be great communication, our expectation has to lower and we have to be willing to do the work to go and move it forward. But if you don't know, you've got to learn.
Right. I know that many times when we're talking to couples or coaching couples in this area of forgiveness, we talk about that forgiveness is a decision, not a feeling, right? And we have to manage that decision. Many times I'm thinking about in the Bible where Jesus was asked how many times you're supposed to forgive. And then just say, well, one time. No, 70 times, 7 times.
I'm that person. I want strategies and next steps. I would be like, how many times? You're done.
Right. And so it is a decision that you're constantly making over and over again instead of just a one and done sometimes, right?
That's right. It isn't a one and done, but it requires someone to come alongside of us, just like I mentioned, to help give us structure, to help us guide us through that. I love this idea. We meet with, and we're around a lot of couplepreneurs, people who are very successful in business and in vocational ministry. The reality is we have to have a strategy. And that helps us move from decision. We know we have a plan moving forward instead of just feeling our way through it. But truth is we do have to forgive whether we feel it or not. If we're going to wait for us to feel it, we're never going to do it. But I think it requires some structure around it so we know we're going to be moving forward and we're not just going to be in this perpetual cycle of me being naughty and then me having to ask for forgiveness if we don't have a plan moving forward. And so I think we get that concept in so many other places in life, but we just think strategies and structures. And one of the most challenging things to do, we don't say marriage is not hard, but we see a lot of people successful at business and they're not successful here. So it takes strategy.
Yeah, it does. It does. I love that. And the idea that you're not going to feel most of the times like forgiving. Right. And that's where it is a decision. And it's also obedience, right? Especially for those of us who are Christ followers, we're going to be obedient to forgive because the Bible tells us to forgive as Christ forgave us. And so it's not always going to feel good. It's not always going to feel like the right time, but forgiveness is obedience too, right? So it has to be that decision, right?
Well, and since you've brought Jesus into this, it's like he's forgiven us of so much, repeatedly forgiven us. And so it's not like, should we forgive? It's like, why would we not forgive?
Right.
But the reality is sometimes when I get stuck in that I am forgiving you a lot or you keep offending me, one of the things I actually do, this is going to surprise you because I haven't told you this, is I think about how many times you've forgiven me and you've overlooked a nasty attitude or a grumpy day or a moment and you've moved on. I'm like, James has done that for me and given grace for me. I'm going to give grace for him. And so, yeah, it is a choice.
Yeah, and I think it's also being quick to forgive those small offenses, right? Because one of the things we always say is that small offenses build up and become fences between us. And then it's harder to, they all compound. It feels like something bigger, but it's really just a compilation of small offenses that have built up, that have built this
large fence.
Large fence that's sometimes harder to take down and sometimes harder to get over forgiveness. So that decision to be quick to forgive. And again, it's not about if your spouse asks for forgiveness, right? It's a decision that you're being obedient, not waiting for them to ask for apology. In our hearts and our minds, we can forgive the offense, even if the behavior is not changed. Right. Immediately.
Yeah, because that's something you can do that doesn't require two people. Me forgiving you. We've talked about this small offenses build large fences. And you may have had this image in your mind, but it just came to me now. You know, chain link fence. I used to have chain link fence when I was growing up.
Yeah, we did too.
And climb over it and you get your leg caught on the. But you think about how a chain link fence links together. And these are like all these small offenses are linking together, and it's so wide and so tall, and you're like, these things are just, some of them are just not even worth holding on to. There are some that are bigger, but those little offenses really do link together and create a barrier that says you're not here, and if you try to come over, I'm going to catch your leg on the
that's true.
Yeah,
and you know, over the years have met with a lot of couples and coached a lot of couples who have had areas that there's been a lack of forgiveness, and we've seen the result of that in their relationship. I'm sure maybe some people listening today have maybe areas of unforgiveness in their marriage, and they're seeing the results of that. I know you deal with a lot in the inner healing space and just what happens when we hold on to offense or this thing. Can you talk a little bit about the cost of unforgiveness?
Well, we know it's like drinking poison, hoping the other person dies. So that, I mean, we're not actually helping move the relationship forward when we just choose to not forgive. It causes damage. It causes division in our relationship. But there is a cost to that. I don't know if you've heard this before, but forgiveness is expensive, but unforgiveness will bankrupt you. So it costs you something to forgive, but if you don't forgive, it will bankrupt your relationship.
Wow.
When you choose to forgive, it costs you the right to be right. When you choose to forgive, it costs you the right or having your way. And it may not even be in the event. It may be how it plays out. Like it has to play out this way. It has to be this, this, and this, or I'm not going to forgive. That's, again, we've just been around this rodeo with a couple. And so that individual wanted their way and how the order went, and they were not going to budge. he was not willing to pay the cost of not having his way. It also cost you that you may not have all the reasons why. Why did this happen? Why did you say that? What happened before that? I got to have all the details. Sometimes that's important. Most of the time it isn't. It's just stepping into forgiveness going, hey, I do this a lot with you. James, can I back myself out of the corner?
Right.
And you're like, granted. Because if we go into the details as to why we got in the sticky place that we were, it's not actually going to be fruitful. I just need to say, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? I just want a do-over.
Right.
And it allows me to kind of reset and regulate my emotions. It also costs you to restrain yourself. There's a lot in self-control. It's actually a fruit of the Spirit. So restraining yourself from saying what you want to say. I got to get this last thing out before I don't have to get that last thing out. The last thing that I want to say is probably going to cause another event. And so allowing your mouth to shut down so that you don't actually say too much. The other thing you have to restrain against doing is connecting dots. Well, that connected to this and that. And again, yes, that could be true. But the reality is we just need to get to the point of coming together and going, we want to be together. All of that doesn't matter. I'm not going to connect your motive and why you did that and this, that, and the other before. But it costs us to restrain ourselves from connecting dots. The other thing we have to restrain ourselves from doing is not embracing the awkward moment. So I remember when you're learning of navigating
self-awareness and empathy, and
That's right. So you had your empathy.
It's not that I wasn't empathetic; I just didn't leverage empathy.
That's right. That's right. I remember people saying, "How is life at home with James?" I mean, he's just so like the empathy wasn't. You did have it, but you weren't leveraging it. But when you started practicing empathy, it was very awkward in the beginning. It was, "How are you feeling?" Let me read my empathy statement so I can. So it was really clunky. Now, if I actually was going to pick that apart with you and go, "You didn't mean that. This is not what." No, James is practicing empathy. He's trying. These are awkward moments, and I'm not going to get hung up that, did you really mean that? Because it doesn't sound like you did.
Right.
No, you're practicing empathy statements. It's a little foreign to you.
Right.
And we're moving forward.
Right. So in the instance of forgiveness or accepting an apology, sometimes giving an apology or asking for forgiveness can feel awkward, right? Having grace toward your spouse if they're asking for forgiveness, or if your spouse comes to you and says, "Hey, I apologize for this. Would you forgive me?" A lot of times we don't do that well. When we started talking about the cost of unforgiveness, you mentioned that unforgiveness is like drinking poison and think it's going to hurt the other person.
Right.
So there's definitely a cost of things that we have to refrain from, the right of having our way, having clarity, the awkward things. But can you talk a little bit more about some of the internal things that it does to us as individuals if we hold on to unforgiveness?
Right. When we hold on to unforgiveness, when we choose not to forgive, we actually internally start eroding from the inside out. We become bitter.
Right.
There's resentment. Resentment in my relationship with you will start building. So this is, we're not only building a fence, we're actually causing more division of like, I don't trust you. I expect you to act the same way every time. And so unforgiveness just leads way to more unforgiveness. And spiritually, it'll start separating us from God. Because we are believers, we know that this is the source of our marriage relationship.
Right.
I need access to Him to be able to forgive and operate with you. But when I hold on to unforgiveness, all it does is produces bitter fruit.
Right.
Anger. Actually, we had a couple. She did not want to forgive. And she said, I have come so comfortable with anger, I don't want to give it up.
Right.
It was more comfortable for her to hold on to unforgiveness and be angry, that fruit, than to forgive and actually have a fruit that is of joy, peace, enjoying each other, fruitfulness in your marriage relationship, and momentum to move forward. So much so, it interrupted their fun together. It interrupted their emotional intimacy. It interrupted their sexual intimacy for 20 years. Holding on to unforgiveness, you don't understand the implications to yourself and then the way you see the world.
Yeah, I'm reminded of an old book by John Bevere, The Bait of Satan, where he talks about that offense is the root of bitterness, and that when we don't forgive offenses, and I've seen this in my own life. I have, some relatives who were never able to forgive themselves. And because they never forgave themselves as they got older and older and older, that root of bitterness, that offense that they never let go about themselves grew into bitterness. And the older they got, the more bitter they got.
Yeah.
Right. And it affected all the relationships around them. Holding on to unforgiveness is actually extremely costly. It's not just about the dynamics of
Us.
our relationship. It affects us individually in every other relationship around us. And it's the spiritual
Principle.
law that, what you sow, you reap. And so you're sowing unforgiveness. That's a seed that you're planting, and it's eventually going to grow a harvest of bitterness and anger and all those
No
places,
good fruit.
right?
No good fruit. What I will say is we recently were with a couple. She wasn't holding unforgiveness against her husband, but she was holding unforgiveness against a sibling. And she didn't understand that unforgiveness was actually impacting their relationship, her marriage relationship.
Yeah.
We think, oh, well, I can get over that, or I can overlook that. But that actually will impact her marriage, because that seed of unforgiveness is still in our lives and spreads, again, just like it has no way.
It's like poison ivy.
Oh, goodness. Remember that? When it spread.
Yeah.
I had it on my leg, and when I'd go to the bathroom, I would take my pants down, up, and I'd spread the poison ivy on my leg.
Yeah.
It was not, I'm sure I just gave a visual to someone who doesn't want it, but it ain't good, people. It's not good. No way.
That's crazy. Okay, we probably should move on from that. Okay, let's talk about the next step that comes after forgiveness. And so I want to talk about this idea of reconciliation and the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I think this is probably where a lot of couples get stuck. They assume that forgiving means that everything's just going to go back to normal, but there's actually some crucial distinctions there. Can we unpack that a bit?
Yeah. So forgiveness releases the debt. I can forgive you. I don't have to have an apology from you. I can actually forgive you. I've done this many times in other relationships, is I just choose to release the debt. Again, you don't have to have an apology. It's great when you do. There's an interchange and understanding. Redemption is where the story starts to be reframed. And this is what God's work does. He begins to start redeeming it. And that's really one way. But reconciliation rebuilds the relationship. It comes after forgiveness, but it requires two people. Ideally, we're going to have an exchange about forgiveness, but the truth is, to move forward in reconciliation, we both have to come together. We both have to have a conversation. We both have to want to move forward in strength. That's where we start with couples on some of our discovery calls. Do you want to move forward? If one doesn't want to move forward, there's not reconciliation.
Right, it takes both of them.
It takes both of them. One person can forgive, but if they don't want to both move forward, we're at an impasse.
Right.
So understanding that is critical, because forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. And reconciliation takes work, it takes discipline, it takes habit, it takes process, practice, new habits, new ways of thinking about things, new mindsets. Hummingbird mindset, looking for the honey, versus a vulture looking for all the wrong things.
Right.
It requires a lot from us and a self-discipline to move forward.
So forgiveness is something that I give or I receive individually. God reframes that and redeems the situation. That's what he does. And then the two of us actually work on building the new story forward from that. That's reconciliation.
Yes.
When we look at couples we've worked with, there's been forgiveness given. But again, it takes both the husband and the wife in the relationship to want to reconcile and make something different than what was in the past.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And if that's not there, it's very hard to move forward. I can't even see a way forward if both people aren't willing to come together and own their part and move together with a strategy.
Somebody may be listening that they're hurting right now because they feel like they've forgiven, but there's no reconciliation. The freedom would be to know that the step that we're required to do is to forgive. Especially as Christ followers, that's the obedience to forgive as Christ forgave. We can't force the other person to reconcile with us, but we can do everything we can to live at peace and to make restitution as much as we can and pray that there's going to be reconciliation moving forward.
Right. This is so evident in my relationship with my mom. God rest her soul. Love her, so much powerful things about her. But we had a little tumultuous hiccup here and there.
Right.
And I had to make a decision to choose her for something she did without her asking for forgiveness. We didn't have reconciliation for a long time, maybe not really even full reconciliation. I honored her. I loved her. I cared for her. I really had tender emotions toward her, but our relationship wasn't to the fullest it could be.
Right.
because there wasn't honesty and coming together, reconciliation, her coming to go, hey, Lisa, I'm so sorry. I can imagine that how this impacted you. Now, I think about that with my mom, and that's very different than when I think about it in a marriage relationship. And I think it would be very difficult in a marriage relationship, although there's someone listening, that you have someone on the other side of you who is not willing to reconcile, and you're trying to push through to make it. It is okay that there's not the fullness of your marriage and what marriage is intended to be, just like the fullness of a mom and daughter relationship wasn't fully there. But there are things that are absent in a marriage when the other person isn't willing to come in to reconcile, which I think that's where it gets really dicey and really complicated. And I just want to admit that that's true in a marriage relationship. And we know people who are staying in for the covenant of marriage, that there hasn't been reconciliation from the other side. And that is a tall order to walk out.
Yeah. And that's where you just continue to pray that God redeems the situation on both sides. And, again, it takes two great forgivers.
Yeah.
And both forgiving each other and both moving towards reconciliation.
I love it.
Okay, let's talk about some practical steps towards forgiveness. So for a couple who's listening today, maybe recognizing that they have some areas of unforgiveness in their marriage, what are some practical steps that we can take to start moving towards forgiveness?
I have strong opinions about what an apology should sound like and feel like in the moment of forgiveness that transpires, because I know this is a spiritual act. And because we're spiritual beings, this is incredibly important how we do this so that we can lock up what the enemy wants, because he wants to divide, destroy, kill. He has no plan, no hope, desire that you and I are going to be in oneness.
Right.
He's not. So how we go about this is actually really important. So if I'm the one who made the mistake, I was offensive toward you, I maybe hurt you with my words or behavior, I can use words like I'm sorry and I apologize. I apologize for my behavior. That interaction wasn't my best self. But I believe we have to say, James, will you forgive me? That's the spiritual act, because in the Bible, it doesn't talk about sorry and apology. It doesn't. It says forgiveness. And I need to specifically ask you to forgive me. But I'm going to come to you with a lot of language around that situation. I'm going to give details of how I brought offense. For that, I'm so sorry.
You're owning it.
You're exactly right. You have to own it. It is my responsibility if I have offended you or I've had a behavior against you, that it's my responsibility to come with an action plan, how I'm going to move forward the next time that emotion or that situation comes up. Because you cannot continue forgiving me every day or every week for the same behavior. This is where it gets exhausting to forgive. And this is why forgiveness in marriage is hard. You keep forgiving me for the same dang behavior.
Right.
I have to stop that. And if I don't want you managing me and telling me what to do, if you'd just do this, if I would just own it myself, then I wouldn't have to worry about that. So I would say, the next time when that happens, this is my plan. This is my strategy. I remember this with Parker, our son. He would actually, I don't know if you remember, he would store, like he'd take food to his room and put plates under the bed. And I'd go up there and be like, where's all the plates in the house? And I'd find the plates under his bed with half-eaten nachos and all that kind of craziness. And so I was just wearing him out. He's like, Mom, you're just wearing me out about cleaning my room. Well, I said, son, there's a way this will all stop. This wearing you out will stop.
Right.
This nagging person will stop.
Right.
Clean your room.
Right.
Just clean.
Just stop doing it.
Just stop doing it.
Right.
So we have to own what it is, what we are doing. This is the reality. We're adults who are married. Grow up and own your own stuff. Now, that's a spiritual spanking for somebody.
Well, that's where we talk about knowing yourself to lead yourself. If we have things that we're doing accidentally and we're not intentional with our behavior, those things are always going to cause negative consequences in our marriage and create a reality where our spouse feels distant from us or disconnected. So we have to take responsibility for our actions and stop acting accidentally and just in bad patterns and kind of go, no, I'm going to grow up. I'm going to lead myself intentionally. I'm going to stop hurting my spouse. I'm going to stop doing these things I know hurt my spouse and move forward then.
Right. So as I'm asking you for forgiveness, what I need to hear back from you. So this is, again, we're buttoning up what really this transaction, it's actually more spiritual than transaction, but it is
a spiritual transaction.
It is. So if I say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And you go, it's okay. Unacceptable.
Yeah. Or no worries.
No worries.
It's all good.
No, it isn't all good. So it gets a little annoying, but I'm going, no, it isn't okay. So truly coming back from you to do a good, tight forgiveness transaction.
I actually need to come back and say, I forgive you, right?
Correct. And that may come with some of the ways it actually impacted you, the way it made you feel.
Right. And you're not making excuses for that. Right. It's you're owning the apology, you're owning the asking for forgiveness. I'm going to forgive you for that.
Right. Now, let's say that you're coming to me.
Right.
And so how do I receive you? I'm going to be gracious, but I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to say that's exactly right. You destroyed that. No, I'm not loading in on what you did. I'm being gracious, but I'm being honest of how it impacted me. I'm minding my tone, and I don't judge the apology. I think this is where we get in a trap of going, what's the motive? Is this manipulation? And sometimes there may be that going on, but for the most part, we need to not judge why someone's coming to us and receive it, and then grant forgiveness. Yes, James, I forgive you. Those are key words, because in the spirit realm, we're actually buttoning up what the enemy wants to do. So I'm going to lean into this because I know you're going to come with a way you're going to move forward next time.
Right. And again, when you give forgiveness or you ask for forgiveness, you wake up the next day, probably not going to feel a big change. Right. And you have to choose that forgiveness over and over and over again. You had written down here that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. Right.
No.
But when we do ask forgiveness and we give forgiveness, it allows God to redeem the past and to heal it. And so that's why it's so important that we understand the power of forgiveness in our marriage relationship. So, well, good conversation today. Thank you for listening. I really hope this conversation encourages you to embrace forgiveness and grace intentionally in your marriage. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe and maybe go and leave us a review for the podcast. Your feedback helps us reach more couples seeking to build strong, resilient marriages. And if you found this conversation valuable, share it with somebody you know that may be struggling in this area, that they could use these insights too.
Yeah, you can connect with us on Instagram at artespousing, visiting our website at artespousing.com, or sending us questions at hello@artespousing. Don't forget to consider scheduling a call with us to see if the Marriage Clarity Accelerator would be helpful for your marriage. We'll see you next time on the Art Espousing podcast. Until then,
bye-bye.